Hi, I'm Shaka Hislop, and you're here at Extra Time TV.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Extra Time TV. This is Andre Suklal, and I'm joined by another Andre Samuel, who has been around just like me. We are now veterans of this game, Andre. But before we get into the real topic today, which is Trinidad and Tobago taking on Jamaica in the Unity Cup, which is very exciting. Dwight Yorke is the coach. It's good to have you here. Folks, if you don't know, and you should know, Andre, like myself, I would say even more so, has been, in the arena of Trinidad and Tobago football for a long time. He had the pleasure and honor of going to the World Cup with the team in 2006, and he joined the team as well, in the US for a couple of games. So, Andre, you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Oh, for sure. I was lucky enough to be one of the fans, the supporters who made a trip to Germany in 2006. So that was like one of the things, the experiences of my life that I would always remember. Hearing an anthem in Dortmund against Sweden, actually pulling off the draw. And I've always had a lot of affair with the national team. It has been, I follow them. Sometimes they hurt me. Like some people, if you have that experience with West Indies cricket, I have that experience with Trinidad football and a little bit of West Indies cricket. But I mean, I love the country. I love supporting the team, and I mean, I've had experiences where I've been part of teams that went to cover the team both locally and in a couple instances abroad in Miami and in Denver. Been to press conferences, with the team, etc. So I have a love affair with the team, and it's good that we're at a point where we're a little bit on the up. We have the right at the helm, and it's good to have that experience now to get that feel good factor back in.
Yes, folks. And, just a little fact that nobody asked for. Before I got into this whole media thing, Andre was one of the first guys to interview me pre-media when we were in Argentina. Trinidad and Tobago was taking on Argentina, and I guess, that's where it all began.
I actually forgot about that. I mean, I remember when Trinidad and Tobago took on Argentina. We lost Trinidad. We actually put in a pretty good showing in that game. Argentina didn't score until about the 40-something minute. They scored their first goal, and we actually matched them toe-to-toe for the most part, and they were a World Cup bound team. So it was a pretty good showing. I remember us there just enjoying the weather, enjoying steak, and having a great time in Argentina. That was about 11 years ago, I believe, 2014.
I mean, it just hit me how long ago that was. To me, it feels just like yesterday, us in our leather jackets, having steak and just poking around the country.
That's right.
We're going to get into the good stuff, like Andre. It feels weird saying my name, but, like Andre, we've had lots of ups and downs with the Trinidad and Tobago national team. And, that's when we do have the ups. It's more rewarding than if you just jump on, this is a little side swipe at the bandwagon fans. But, today, Trinidad and Tobago took on Jamaica in the Unity Cup, which I'll explain maybe in another video. I'll get into the details why this is an interesting cup. I have some written up items on EXTVmedia.com. So you all could check that out and, contribute if you'd like. But the game ended 3-2. Goals from Palmer, Burrell, and King, which, was a bit heartbreaking for the national team because they played really well. Leacock and Molino scoring 2 goals. And, we were just close to going to a penalty shootout. So just to summarize things really quickly, this is a game that, in a lot of ways serves as preparation and exposure for a lot of players. I did take a quick look at Dwight Yorke's post-match conference. I can't remember word for word, but, he basically generalized the entire game by saying it was a game of 2 halves. So, Andre, let me hear your initial thoughts on this result and this game.
Oh, definitely. I think Dwight was spot on. I think Jamaica took the initiative at the start of the game. I think that we were a bit timid to start. We were a little bit cautious, and in the blink of an eye, Jamaica were all over us. I didn't think we had any particular set of rhythm. We were playing passes, but it was the normal side to side, trying to build up slow at the back, and then we would lose possession in midfield, and then Jamaica would quickly counter. We had about 20 odd minutes of that where Jamaica had quite a bit of opportunities to score. They eventually had the penalty, the first goal, which was a penalty, off of another a possession that we lost in midfield again. It was a little bit sloppy ball control. I think it was Daniel Phillips, I believe. And then they counter-attacked. We fouled in the box, and I think what touched me, well, not touched me, but what stood out to me is the fact that a lot of the goals. I mean, it's good to say this in hindsight, but a lot of the goals were goals that things that he could have avoided. We lost the ball there. The defender, I think, didn't have to could have defended the attack a little bit better, probably showing more to the line instead of letting them cutting inside. So after Jamaica took control of the game, I think whatever tweaks Dwight made at halftime kind of worked, because I don't know if it was the mentality of the team. I don't know if it was just instilling that bit of confidence to tell the players that they belong to play here, because we actually saw a different team. It wasn't necessarily the change in personnel, whether he took off players at halftime and put on a new bunch. No. The same team came on, and although Jamaica scored first in the second half, we responded straight off from the kickoff. And we pressed and pressed. We had a couple of opportunities where I believe Rio Cardines had a chance to score. I think young Rushford again had a chance to score on a counter. So we were having chances. We were attacking. We were playing on the front foot, and it was a breath of fresh air, because I don't want to be too critical of Angus Eve. I mean, he was a loyal servant, and he did well in his time within his own limitations. But we more or less played accustomed to playing games on the back foot, hoping that one of us or more attacking players catch them on the counter. But it was nice to see some build-up play. It was nice to see us knocking the ball in midfield. Molino had a hell of a game today. He was fantastic in the middle. He showed his class. He showed that he was a quality player. And it's good to see that you can rock back and look at your national team and identify players who were of sublime quality. I think Rio Cardines had a wonderful start to his career on a whole in terms of the national team. He made his debut. Again, the first 20 minutes, he was a little bit feeling himself out, but it's the first time he's with the team. So it was nice of him to come into his own, had a fantastic free kick that led to the second goal. And, but I would save the last goal that Jamaica scored for later on.
Yes. There's so much to dissect, and we try to keep this condensed because the attention spans and all that stuff with YouTube now. It's so strange. But just to build on what you're saying, Dwight Yorke definitely addressed this, and I'm just going to echo what he's saying. International football is such a misleading thing in terms of what people expect. People who look at club football, coaches work with their players day to day, day in, day out. Whereas with international football, you see them for a couple of days. Sometimes communication is, via Zoom and digital means. And to get those players for a couple of days. And while the game, of course, I'll never say it's a perfect game. It definitely is a step in the right direction from what I saw. I saw that they were and you highlighted it perfectly, so I'm not going to repeat what you're saying. A lot of the things that was seen today, I'm pretty sure that's the purpose of this exercise. They could look at these things and say, okay, guys, we need a little bit more concentration on that. The goal, which we'll discuss a little bit more in the end, especially the third goal. It was 2 penalties, and these are fixable things. And I think, as you said, the fact that we were proactive was refreshing to me. I was looking at the game, and also another thing that I want to point out. Speaking with yourself, James Shaka Hislop over the years with different coaches, and this is no disrespect to the coaches. One of the common themes we did see is that Trinidad and Tobago tend to run out of gas, usually in the 65th to the 70th minute. In most cases, in this particular case, I was very impressed by the fitness levels of the players. In particular, Molino, he had all his injuries over the last couple of years. He came back. He's playing in the local league now, and he showed his experience. And we'll speak about the experienced players in a while. But it was very exciting to me that you can now kind of see after a couple games, because it's very difficult to assess a coach after 1 or 2 games, but you're starting to see, I think, the effect Dwight Yorke has on the team. He is Dwight Yorke. He's an inspirational player for us. I think he is putting his Dwight Yorke isms on the team, if that makes any sense. That proactive nature. According to SofaScore here, who we have EXTV has a nice little arrangement with, they said that he played with a 3-4-3 formation, which is pretty aggressive. For Trinidad and Tobago to play such an aggressive formation, because in the past, if we played 3 at the back, it would more be defensive, and as you said, a counter-attacking style of football. And no disrespect to Angus, I actually appreciate different tactics, but to see the proactive nature and even the nature of the passing, we always had this sort of pensive way we used to play, and you could see a lot more precision and purposeful thought in the passing. The players were more confident. You could see it. It's something very difficult to quantify, but it's something you need to look at the game and see. And yes, you're right. It was a Dwight Yorke said this. It was a game of two halves, and I can't remember the exact thing he said on the press conference. But he did highlight, that he had some issues with the wing backs. He said they were being a bit too aggressive, and that was one of the discussions he had at halftime. And he said that was one of the reasons why it seemed like they were more composed. And to me, the fact that they were 2-0 down and immediately responded. And to me, team mentality is another thing that I think was probably we lacked for a couple of years to bounce back from situations like that. Yes, we lost the game, folks. I know that. But, in hindsight, to me, that's my quick way of summarizing a lot of the positive things I saw. Well, I mean, if you give me a chance, we'd probably talk for hours, but we can't. So, in addition to, the initial reactions that both of us had, we conceded, two penalties and then the other goal as well. So and what are your thoughts on those three goals in particular? If there's one you needed to highlight, let me know your thoughts.
Of course. I mean, the three goals were goals that I think were all preventable. But I mean, if you ask anybody who's looking at the game from an analytical point of view, in hindsight, they would say all goals that goals you can prevent. But I think there was a little bit of sloppiness for the first goal with the central midfielder losing the ball, and Jamaica just went on the attack and then conceded the penalty. For the second goal, I believe that we had 8 defenders. We had 8 defenders in the penalty box, and the ball fell to the two of the 3 Jamaicans in the box. So we had had numbers in the box, but people weren't being picked up. So we had a little ricochet against Rio Cardines, and it fell to one of the attackers who shot the ball. Marvin made a save, but the Jamaican attacker was the quickest to react to get that second goal. But again, the heads didn't drop, and that's important. It's important that the team still has that confidence to say that okay, we belong here with 2 goals down, but we're still in a fight and we're still in a battle. And that says a lot for me, for the team, for the confidence. I mean, it wasn't the strongest Jamaican squad, but we could also safely say it wasn't our strongest squad as well.
Correct.
To be honest, I was putting my hands up at the start of the tournament when I saw the team that was chosen to go. I think it came out a little bit late, but when the team was actually made public, I was a little bit disappointed. Not for the players who are obviously getting the opportunity. I'm happy for everybody who get a chance to represent the country. But I thought that this was a fantastic opportunity for us to tap into the diaspora. The hidden players who have that parentage, right, that can play for Trinidad. They don't have to come to Trinidad and be in an unfamiliar place. We could have players who could be in their country. They could be in England, or if they, because I know we have a couple of players in Holland, we have a couple of players in Spain, we have a couple of players who play in the Dutch Sea. I said that before. I believe wherever they are, right? And my thought process was that we would use an opportunity to bring these players, get them in the team, and start to integrate some new players. So when I saw that was a primarily local team, I thought, it's going to be difficult for a local team to leave there, travel to 8 to 10 hours to England, and then play some football, when we could actually gotten players that that were closer to the UK. But I'm happy that these guys actually dug deep and they actually played well. They stood out, and I'm happy for Bongo. That Isaiah Leacock, for those not familiar, I know he has been knocking on the door of the national team for some time and wasn't getting chances. But I mean, I'm so happy for him that in his first game, and he showed a predatory instinct. Even if you're not involved in the game, it's good that he was able to, seize the opportunity and clinically finish the goal. But lastly, as it relates to the goals that we conceded, I think I'm really disappointed in the way in which Garcia defended that last goal. He's an experienced defender. He had a wonderful run of games in the national team, especially under Angus Eve. So he was one of the senior players that I was expecting a lot better from. And some people blaming Marvin, saying Marvin should have been kind of come off his line faster, because Marvin did hesitate. But when you look at that replay, look at it closely, I can't understand the rationale behind a defender calling the goalkeeper and just stopping. and you know how fast the Jamaicans are. So when you look at the replay, Garcia was in front of the attacking player. So even though he was calling, he should have at least tried to shield the defender away to help the goalkeeper instead of just leaving him to run on. And the striker, used his speed and was able to get there in front. Any good attacking player would have done that because the Jamaicans are known for being nippy as well. So and that in the blink of an eye, I look at the clock, I saw that this was the 93rd minute. I was like, just like that, we lost a wonderful opportunity to take this to penalties. And no matter what happened after penalties, we could have missed all 5 penalties and still lost the game. The feel-good factor knowing that we had drawn the game, a game that we were massive underdogs. And in the lead up to this tournament, I was looking at some of the promotional social media items, and everybody had Trinidad at distant fourth. People like, Trinidad has a football team still. I remember there was a funny IG reel with a guy saying that he said last time he saw Trinidad play football, there was a white man controlling the midfield. He's like, wow, they still have a team, and they were shocked. He was like, Trinidad known for carnival. They know Jamaica. I mean, Jamaica Reggae Boyz obviously is a stronger brand. But they were so sure that Jamaica was just about to blow away Trinidad, and it would be a Jamaica versus a Nigeria / Ghana. So, and another point to make is that I looked at the extended coverage after the game, because I think it was a Ghanaian broadcast that televised the game, and they too were very shocked at the way in which Trinidad played in that second half. And the takeaway that they got is that Trinidad and Tobago can play. They have structure. They have talented players. They definitely not here to make up numbers. And they're already saying whoever loses between Nigeria and Ghana, the third place playoff is good. They're going to get a game, so it's not a foregone conclusion. So it was a nice feel-good factor that we came into this tournament. And we kind of, I know we still have a game to go, but we can say that we could leave it despite being in third place playoff, we could leave it our heads held high.
Correct. And for folks, who don't know the structure of the tournament, we're still in it, for the third place. We play whoever wins between Ghana and Nigeria. So that's what Andre meant, we still have that other game to play. But you're right.
Whoever loses.
I mean, whoever loses, sorry. This is very exciting for us, because I saw that same podcast you were talking about. I saw clips of it on Instagram, and I was shocked. It was a reality check as somebody who is from this country to see the perception other people have of us. Of course, I know we are not considered by any means a world superpower, but I think Trinidad and Tobago has done well with all things considered. Qualifying for that World Cup, we've always had that respect, but it seems as if outside the Caribbean, we will appeared as if we were going to be cannon fodder. But what I liked is, in addition to, the sad fact that we lost the way we did, it did send a positive message. And, just to pull up some stats here, just to show the numbers, not just us saying that, folks. According to SuperScore, the possession was 50-50. I got this from those guys. They had 15 shots. We had 14. They had 10 on target. We had 4. Yellow cards, 4-5, and then I'll pull up the possession area. So 50-50. So one thing I really wanted to discuss is, I know you mentioned some of the players that should have been there and so on. The senior players that played. Obviously Kevin Molino is a senior player. It's hard to believe that, to me, Kevin Molino was still that young player, in the MLS, Kaka singing him praises. Molino, Jovan Jones, Marvin Phillip. I know some people express some concerns about those guys returning to the starting lineup, but to me today, from my personal opinion, I think they are the experienced guys, for example, how Dwight Yorke was back in 2006. Because outside maybe Levi Garcia and a couple others, we've hardly had any sort of players that have performed in Europe for a long period of time, in a long time. So having these guys play at the highest level, to me at least, it makes sense having these guys around, whether they stick around all the way to the end, barring injuries and so on. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I think they perform really well. But what were your thoughts on that trio of senior players?
Oh, definitely. I think let's start with Molino. I think Molino is a quality player. I've always respected the fact that Molino in terms of the generation after the 2016. He was potentially the best player to come out of Trinidad and Tobago, just right after the Soca Warriors team, because that was the Asian team. So he was from the emerging group that I think they qualified for the 2007 under 17 World Cup.
I think
And then
so,
they
yeah.
also qualified for the under 20 World Cup in 2009. So he was part of of the nucleus of that team, and he was actually the leading force in terms of who went on to have a really strong career. I think Sheldon Batu was on that team as well. So it's good that he's there. I know that he and Angus had their issues, and now he's come out of it, meaning that Angus is not here, so he's back in the national fold, and he's showing that showing up what we were missing. I'm glad that Joven is here as well, because Joven in the last few games against Cuba, and he showed how much of a quality player he was, and he wasn't making the team with Angus's team either. These are two extremely gifted and quality footballers. Yes, they are probably 33, 32, 33, 34 thereabouts, but Joven Jones and Kevin Molino still have what it takes to push around Tobago football for the next year or two. Regarding Marvin Phillip, I think that's a little gray area for me. I think Marvin Phillip is 40 years old. I'm not quite sure what the thought process is for Marvin still being this heavily involved. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still performing at a high level. He's still performing at a competent level. And I guess that's enough justification right there. If he's still doing it, it shouldn't matter. But in terms of succession planning, we all know Denzel Smith is the heir apparent. He is our number one goalkeeper. He wasn't in the squad today. I know he's in England. He traveled with the team in terms of it's a 24-man squad. But in terms of the 23 players who were named in the match day squad, Denzel wasn't there. Not sure what happened. I hope it's nothing too serious and we could see him suit up in the third place game. But I think they if there was a third keeper, I would have given that keeper the opportunity instead of Marvin, because Marvin should be there, but it's in an overseeing, like a mentorship, that sort of thing. But I think that Marvin has had his time. He's been with us since 2007 in the national team. From the days with him and Jan Michael battling it out since the U17 World Cup. They were both the goalkeepers when the World Cup was held in Trinidad and Tobago. He has been representing this country for the past 25 years.
Yep.
And I think he's 40 now. I think it's time that he hangs up his boots or his gloves, as we should say, and give somebody else a chance, because we have a couple of young keepers that would relish the opportunity to also build a career and represent Trinidad and Tobago and push them to Smith for years to come.
Yeah, just to tap quickly on, I know you mentioned Kevin Molino, and there is an interview, folks. I'll put a link in the description below, when this goes on, where Kevin Molino explained his reasons why he was not on the national team and why he's back. We may actually probably do an exclusive with him when he returns, so you could look out for that as well. It's interesting to hear his thought process now that Dwight Yorke is at the helm, and you could see there is a buzz about the team, Andre. Like, one of the things, this is outside the game. When he was appointed, it was easy. Trinidadians have been used, or Trinbagonians have been used to disappointment. So I could understand there was a level of, skepticism, because when he first came in, now, of course, people like us, we support Trinidad and Tobago no matter what. But there was a little bit of skepticism. I paid attention to all the social media reactions. People like, oh, well, that's great. Let's see if we could get it done on the field. And, I could see one of the pros, and like I said, I wrote something about this on EXTVmedia.com, so you can check it out and give your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree. That's a good thing. We're having a discussion. One of the good things is that Dwight Yorke, because of his brand, because he's Dwight Yorke, because he performed at a high level at Manchester United, because he has these connections, there's so much, intangibles that he brings to the team, that confidence. Now, I know there's the usual cliche where people said, a great player doesn't make a good coach. But I think, and it's still very early, but I am seeing the positive signs there. Just by his presence, he is able to command a certain amount of, attention that, previous players, and no disrespect to them and coaches, probably could not do. He's able to bring that bounce out of the players, command that respect that perhaps maybe other coaches may not have. They may have to resort to different sorts of tactics, and which is fine. It's different. And I'm seeing it. I saw it in some of the previous games, where there's a confidence. And I mentioned this before in how they conduct themselves. There's not that, well, let's see what happens in this game sort of feeling. Let's defend, trying to concede goals and nip a 1-0 sort of mentality. You could see Dwight Yorke is pushing that proactive approach. I like the honesty in his assessment sometimes.
Definitely.
He calls things as it is. I really appreciate that. Stephen Hart as well, to be fair, they all did. But, I think he said all the right things. He didn't come in and, was, saying things just for the sake of saying it. What I also liked, and I said this to defend coaches for years, and one of our earlier episodes, way back when we first did a podcast together, there is a massive expectation from fans in Trinidad and Tobago about, getting results. And oftentimes, I don't know if it's down to the PR or maybe the coaches just didn't have time to pay attention to those things, but addressing the factors that need to be addressed when you are trying to make a good team. For example, resources. It takes time to build a good team. Usually the international football versus club football is very different. Trinidad and Tobago fans are a bit unrealistic sometimes. They expect, Barcelona, Real Madrid type football from the get-go. It takes time to implement ideas and for the players to understand. You may have to tweak players. And I like that he was very clear about this from the very beginning. Other coaches did it as well, but I think coming from Dwight Yorke, that shows, that he understands his target audience really well. And, the results are going really well. Yesterday was a loss, but, there were a lot of positives, which we are highlighting, and we still have another game. And the thing is, the outcome of this tournament is to get us essentially prepared by playing high quality opposition, for the Gold Cup, and essentially, which I think is the real target, which is getting us to the World Cup. We have the best chance we ever had in years in terms of, how the World Cup is set up. So with that being said, the tournament, we still have to see who we're going to play after tomorrow. The game is tomorrow. Overall, them choosing this tournament and the outcomes of this tournament, what do you think would be the ideal outcomes of this tournament?
I think another good showing. I mean, I think win or lose against whether it be Nigeria or Ghana, once we put in another solid performance where, because this could go south very quickly. We could go again and play against Ghana and lose 6-0. And then that entire feel-good factor that you got against Jamaica is out the door. But if we go there and we compete, win, lose, or draw, and we show that, okay, we have that grit, we could fight, and we belong at this level. Because I think you touched on Dwight Yorke and the difference that he, what he brings to this team and the difference or his approach to football. And yes, he has us playing on the front foot. But I think a lot of what Dwight Yorke brings is confidence. And I think a lot of football, because these guys can play, right? I think at international level, the players could play football. They probably might not be consistent in their behaviors and their actions, but in terms of being able to play the game, they can. And I think a lot of it, and I also get drawing on this from Leo Ben-Haka, is everything is psychological. Leo Ben-Haka wasn't this super great tactician that came to Trinidad. No, that's not what he was. He instilled confidence in players. So he told players certain things and made them believe. He will make a little tweak and he will make them believe. Yes, the tactics will always be there. Everybody is a tactician. Everybody have their badges. Everybody could do all of these things. However, is what sort of confidence you can instill in a player. And I think the reason why it may be different from Angus Eve to Dwight Yorke is if I'm a footballer, I'm a young footballer, I'm a Kaim Thomas. I think that's one of the young wingers that we have, right? And if I'm Kaim Thomas, if I hear Angus Eve tell me to go take him on, you could beat him. Take on your man at every opportunity, you could beat him. Or if I hear Dwight Yorke telling me, hey, you're better than him. I've looked at you, I've seen you in training. Take him on, you could beat him. The confidence I will get from hearing it from Dwight is totally different from how I'll feel hearing it from Angus. And these little things make a difference in how a player approaches the game. And you just touched on resourcing. That's another aspect. I think they're trying their best to make the players as comfortable as possible, because that's another factor. because we as Trinidadians, we have an inflated view of ourselves. We always feel that we are so good and we're so famous and we are the best of everything because we could sit and watch Premier League and La Liga on the weekend and then we know everything about football. But in this Unity Cup on the lead up, it just shows that the world really does not care about Trinidad and Trinidad and Tobago football, right? But it's all about the environment that we have to put the players in, and we have to get serious about football. I'm going to tell you something I'm not sure if you know, Andre. We played Cuba the other day in a home and away series to get to the Gold Cup, I believe, right? The first game was in Cuba. We beat them 2-1.
I think it was
2-1.
two
We beat them 2-1. 2-1, yeah, we beat them 2-1.
Yeah.
We beat them 2-1, and then we had to come back to Trinidad the game 4 days later or 5 days later. Let's say 4 days later. Trinidad and Tobago had to take a plane, had to leave earlier to take a plane to Miami, had do a connecting flight from Miami to Trinidad. Cuba had a private jet, take them straight to Trinidad.
Yep.
So these little things, because you might see that as nothing, but one, the Cuban side got to rest more after the game. And they had a shorter flight time. We had to go Miami. They had to go to Miami first for probably, they said 2 hours to Miami, and then 4 hours to back to Trinidad. So they had half the flight time and more rest. So thankfully we beat them because they got a red card in the first 5 minutes of the game, and that worked out pretty good.
Yes,
but in terms of these little differences that you have to put in place, and it's cost money. So you look at Premiership players and you think they perform in the weekend, they don't have a care in the world other than just to go out there and pay them to do their best. So all in all, I think Dwight has brought this energy where he keeps saying that, hey, we need to make sure the players are taken care of. We also need to create that environment that has that reflects professionalism, so that we can be professional when the players can be. You can't expect professionalism if you're not giving it off the field as well. Mm-hmm. So, and the fact that he did it at the highest level, he also commands respect in the TTFF, in corporate Trinidad, in the government. So the brand or the name Dwight Yorke adds all of those things. And you could see it trickling through our football. And I'm really excited about. I'm not saying that we're going to qualify for the World Cup. I'm not saying we're going to have a really amazing World Cup run. But I think the journey there is going to be something that I most likely will enjoy.
Yes, and just to build on what you were saying, I definitely heard little clips about or snippets about what happened on the way back to Trinidad after that Cuba game. And I have a huge appreciation for that now, because between 2016 until now, strangely enough, I got a lot of experience working with clubs and national teams. I had a brief period with Kenwin with the women's senior team, and then with Central FC, and then being around teams like Inter Miami and the US men's national team, when Bruce Arena was still there when we knocked them out. Sorry, Thomas, Bruce. When Dennis was the coach, where I saw such a contrast. Now, the easy answer is USA has a blank check and lots of money, or at least more money than us. But you are spot on. Those things that people don't see behind the scenes. I'll even give you another story with the women's national team. We were supposed to qualify for the final rounds in Mexico, which we did, thankfully. And we were in Turks and Caicos. And some of the players had visas, some of the players didn't. So first off, the first problem was players had to go 2 different directions. The ones who had the American visas could have gone to Miami and then back to Trinidad, then to Tobago. And then the others had to go to Panama, and I believe there was another stop. So the team was split into 2. When we got to the airport, there was a massive delay, and we were stuck there, and it was actually getting to the point where it legitimately was getting to the point where we were possibly going to miss the game. And we found out there was wow. It sounds kind of hilarious now, but there was an animal on the a cow or something on the runway, and we couldn't fly. And then we got to Miami, the Miami batch, I should call it, the US contingent, if you want to call it that, who had their visas. So we already maybe 10 hours ahead of off of what we were supposed to do. Then we got the hotel. The players got minimal sleep. Then the game was, I can't remember the exact day, but we got to Tobago. at maybe 9 p.m. the night before the match. And the other half of the team was still flying. You know, I've could appreciate this way more now because I've seen it as a fan and I've seen it as somebody as part of the staff. And as a fan, I would be like, why, why were they struggling at certain points? They look like they were struggling. There's so much things logistically behind the scenes that, Dwight Yorke would bring to this team now, where he's used to a certain standard. This is what he did at Manchester United and those Premier League clubs and wherever he went. And, he would find ways to make sure that the players are, as you said, prepared in the best way possible. That includes accommodations and, traveling, even getting to the stadium, the preparation. Those things are so important. These are the things that the average fans don't see. And, luckily you and I have a little bit more insight into these things. We could give people a wider impression so they could understand. And, Dwight Yorke brings that corporate interest, as you said. That, people, Dwight Yorke has that, like Argentina has Messi. I know that's an extreme example, but, Dwight Yorke is like that for us.
Exactly. He's our Messi, if you want to call it that. Yeah, he's our GOAT, of course.
Yeah, and, folks, he won a Champions League and the original Ronaldo didn't. So, that says, a lot. This guy won a treble. That's just, he has such respect in the world game that he's able to command these things, even this Unity Cup as well. And, I think all these things, there's so much little things. It's not just a FIFA mentality. And when I say FIFA, the game, which is behind, EAFC, sorry, which, Andre and I used to play a lot. Every once in a while I go, and that's a whole other story. But, where people like the mouth of formations, hey, he should have played 4-4-2 or that. And it's so much more to that. And you hit the nail on the head with the player motivations and respect. Where at the higher levels, these players are already at a certain level. They have a certain skill set. At that point in time, you can't really teach them much. But inspiring confidence and getting the players in a short period of time to understand your systems is really the key. And, I've seen a bit, I'm seeing the progression and the ideas that Dwight Yorke has. Now, with that being said, I don't want to get carried away. As you rightfully said, in the next game, it could easily be a crazy result. We don't know. That's football, right? These are strong teams, from, the AFCON confederations, which they always have strong teams. People always talk about the Copa America and Euros, but the AFCON is always a really strong tournament. People ignore it. I don't know why, but these are the kind of teams that I like that Trinidad and Tobago is playing.
And these are powerful teams within the AFCON. So it's not it's not an ordinary team. It's not it's not. I'm not no disrespect to any other team, but it's not Burkina Faso or some other. It's the top tier. It's Nigeria and Ghana. And if you had to rank a top 5 in Africa, they're definitely going to be in that. And they have Premier League players, they have players playing in Italy, they have players playing in Spain, all over the world, and they are also a football mad country. So it's just to be able to, we are 1.2 million, and they probably hundreds of millions. To be able to be able to wear that shirt, whether you're the first string, the second string, the third string, is an ultimately amazing honor. So, looking forward to a fantastic game, and hopefully we should be able to show some grit and some fight and get a good result.
Yes, I think the thing is, I would always say, because I'm all philosophical, even though the result, for example, today is a perfect example. Even though we lost today, and we prefer to win all the time, who doesn't want to win? Winning is a habit. We performed, obviously it wasn't a 10 out of 10 game. There's no 10 out of 10 game. There's always problems if you dissect any game. But you could see the direction Dwight Yorke is heading. And, what I would say heading into this next game is that even though it is possible that we could probably lose that game or not get a result we like, the outcomes and the type of exposure and preparation physically and mentally that we are getting from this tournament heading into the qualifiers for the World Cup, which is St. Kitts, which, I'll definitely be there, of course, and also the Gold Cup, which, I think it's a double bonus for us. I wrote about that. I said it before, folks. You could check it out on extvmedia.com. Also, feel free to drop comments and let us know what you think about, the both Andres. It feels so strange saying that, what you think. Whether you agree, whether you disagree, drop those comments below. It's a discussion. I did take a little hiatus for a while. Andres, we still keep in touch on top of football things. It'll be exciting to hear other people's thoughts on not just this game today, but, the overall progression of Dwight Yorke. But, before we wrap things up, Andre, any final, thoughts about, any players that were really outstanding to you? Anything that, really stood out, or any final things you want to leave before we go?
Oh, just to say that I mean for all those listening, I think that we should really come out and support the team on the 6th. I mean, yes, we have this game against the third place game against whether it's Ghana or the loser between Ghana and Nigeria. But the real fight begins on June the 6th. And unfortunately, I won't be here. I'll be in Orlando for a couple of weeks. However, I do plan to head on to Houston to go look at the Trinidad versus Haiti Gold Cup game while I'm in the US. So I'm not getting my syndicates fit, Trinidad versus syndicates fix, but I'll get it against Haiti in Houston. And just to come out and support the team. I think we on to something really new. And yes, some people choose to wait for the end result and jump on the bandwagon, but it feels so much better when you're there from the start.
Correct.
So just jump on board, support the team. We have a lot of exciting young players. I'm looking forward to the World Cup team when it comes together. I think Levi already reaffirmed this commitment. And then we have Spice on the other side. So we have Levi that could play on the right. We have Spice that could play on the left. We have Anjani Fortune, who's a fantastic midfield player from starting for Atlanta United in the MLS. And then we have the guy, a couple more Real Gill, who I think is, once he gets into a nice little system and matures a little bit, could be a really nice attacking player. We have quite a bit of players to still join the team. One thing I've noticed, though, I don't know if you picked up on it. A recent stalwart, well, not a recent stalwart, but a stalwart in the team, not getting any game time under Dwight Yorke, the former captain, Aubrey David. I noticed that he's not in the squad. I'm not sure why he's not in this squad. He didn't play against Cuba, the home and away series against Cuba. He was one of the first names under both Angus Eve as well as Derek King's team sheet. He went from that to not being able to make the squad. Maybe there's a little bit behind that. Talk about having experience in the team, but I think defensively we're lacking a little bit. I think that's one of the areas we need to tighten up on. We probably need to search for players for. But having said all that, still rally around the team, rally around the Soca Warriors. I expect a victory against St. Kitts. I think we should win handsomely. I think probably might score quite a bit of goals against them. Then we go to Costa Rica, where a win against St. Kitts doesn't guarantee that we qualify, but once we beat St. Kitts and we don't lose very badly against Costa Rica, we will be into the next round. And that's where the serious business of qualifying for the World Cup begins, because we will be in one of 3 groups of 4 where the winner qualifies for the World Cup and the second place team goes into a playoff.
Yes.
So I like our chances.
Yeah, it's definitely the best we've had in a long time, the way how it's set up. Still difficult, mind is, but still, it's exciting, and I always say, while Dwight Yorke, the game you are judged by results, I always tell people, and the TTFA, give Dwight Yorke the chance to do his work. Sometimes you need a couple years and the right support to do what you need to do. Of course, it's a result-oriented game, and if it's not going really well, I can understand some criticism. And then even what you mentioned with, Aubrey David and so on, there's so much, we won't go into details about that now, because that's a whole other podcast, a series about, the inner workings of players and the politics and so on, which is, many other people discuss that, and maybe one of these days we will. So,
sure enough, man.
This video could go on for hours, but I'm going to control myself and end it now. So, Andrew, it's a pleasure. And folks, we'll see you next time.
All right, later.
Just a reminder, everyone, for more episodes with Shaka Hislop, be sure to head over to our YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more updates, interviews, and content.